For those obsessed with building their connections on LinkedIn, I have some news you might find disconcerting. Connecting on LinkedIn does not constitute networking. Connecting with someone on LinkedIn, or indeed any social media network, does not mean you have a relationship with them, and certainly doesn't mean you'll ever do business with them. Indeed, I would argue that connecting on LinkedIn brings you no closer to doing business with someone, and depending on what you post, may even lessen the likelihood of you doing so. Oxford professor Robin Dunbar studied 3,375 Facebook users and found that whilst they have an average of 150 so-called friends, just 4 of those friends could be considered dependable. Further, whilst having an average of 150 Facebook friends, those studied regularly communicated with just 3 to 5 of those so-called friends. Many of those so-called friends were found not to be friends at all. People often boast to me about the number of LinkedIn connections they have, only to feel deflated when I ask them how many of those connections they could schedule a coffee with next week. The point being that unless you can organise a coffee with a connection in the next week or so, they are probably not a member of your network. The same rule holds true, in my view, with face-to-face connecting. People have often boasted to me about the size of their database, built by way of collecting business cards at networking events, and then felt deflated when I asked them how many of those contacts they could organise coffee with in the next week or so. It's better to make one friend than collect 100 business cards at a networking event. Now, this is not to say that LinkedIn connections, Facebook friends, and databases built from business cards are of no value. It is simply to say they do not constitute networking. Networking involves developing relationships, and simply connecting with someone doesn't mean you've established a relationship. Securing business certainly involves establishing a relationship. And if you cannot get a connection to coffee in short order, you probably don't have a relationship with them. If you want to read posts on LinkedIn or Facebook, build your connections and friends. If you want a circulation list for your newsletter, collect business cards and build a database. But if you want to network effectively, build relationships. For more on this subject, visit www.djohncarlsonesq.com. That's www.djohncarlsonesq.com.